So looking at our 2005 numbers as far as mites dropped, this is over the course of usually 3 to 4 days, and then this will be averaged out to have the mites per 24 hours, and then how many small hive beetles dropped. So we were really clean in January, very clean in February. March was still really clean. April was really clean. May, the numbers started going up, but we were still under 10 dropping per day. The previous year, we actually treated in May to keep the numbers down, and that may be what we need to do going forward. And I'll show you some more of that. And in June, we started getting a couple that were 3 above 10 a day. You can notice the small hive beetles peaked for us in June. It really started ramping up. I mean, we were at 376 in the 3-day mite fall. That's crazy. So that was June. June we ended up doing alcohol wash. We had 4s, a 6, and a 7. So in June, we have a lot of supers on, so we typically will let that ride as long as it's not above 9. Again, if we would have treated in May, these numbers probably would have been much lower. In July, mite counts had gone from, at the most, 23 per 24 hours up to over 121 per day for 24 hours. Small hive beetles, the numbers were still high, but they had begun to drop. And then we did not treat in July. And we rolled into August, and these numbers are still very high. This one actually, the mites decreased in this hive on the mite drops, and also in hive 4. They also decreased quite a bit in hive 6. So we didn't wash some of these because they were some new queens. So that's how we get those numbers. But we seeing that decrease is nice because nothing was treated at that point. So we roll into August, and we did an alcohol wash. This one, 254 dropping per day, was incredible, especially because previous to that, it was 8 in June, 15.5 in July, and then 254. Such an exponential increase. So I did an alcohol wash and hit 82. I'm thinking they probably were robbing a hive and got lots of mites, because that jump is, I think, more than they could have done in a month's time. So we immediately did an oxalic acid vaporization on that hive. And then we did an ApiGuard treatment later in the day, started that, and that one went for 4 weeks. We did an alcohol wash on the rest of the hives. The highest we had was 21, 17, and 9. Everything else is below the 9, which is a 3% infestation threshold. So we ended up doing an oxalic acid vaporization on all the hives except for the one being treated with ApiGuard. And then we saw the numbers drop from 108 a day to 8. We went from 28 to 24. So you can see that one was not as effective. We had, again, 254. Again, this is after ApiGuard, and it went down to 7. So that was an effective treatment of ApiGuard. I should not see it. This is ApiGuard. And we were from 26 down to 12. Now this one went from 112 up to 124. So the OA just didn't happen to work in that hive. The rest of these were pretty good numbers, except for that one was just still off the charts and was actually increasing. So 26 down to 12. 17 down to 10, 28 down to 24. So somewhat effective, but not as effective as we needed it to be. So hive 9 got treated with ApiGuard. Hive 6 did not get treated. The number is low enough that I think we ended up checking with the alcohol wash just to confirm these numbers that we had. Let's slide on over. Again, the alcohol wash. We had a 1, a 0, a 1. Again, the one that has 24 had 6. So we did end up treating that hive as well. 10.7 came out to be a 3, a 0, 2, a 0, and we did not. We didn't do a count on that one because that hive was rather weak and there wasn't a lot of bees left in it. So that number may have gotten too high for too long and maybe an issue for that hive. And that was an overwintered green marked queen too, so she's a little bit older. And then we went up from 39 to 112 to 17 alcohol wash and a whole bunch of oxalic acid vapor, and it increased to 124. It had 21 mites per 300, which is a 7% infestation. So we did treat them with ApiGuard as well, and I have that on the chart here. These days haven't happened yet, but these will be our treatment cycle for these. This one's a little bit higher, but it had the decrease in mites by itself, and we didn't do an oxalic acid vapor, so I'm hoping that they're going to be okay, because that would be a nice one to select from if they're able to pull their mite numbers down. 3 is a little high for what most people are selecting from, but some of the rest of these numbers look pretty good too. But again, we'll look at these mite numbers, we'll look at the harvest numbers that we just looked at, and we will make our decisions based off of all that information. We'll take a look at 2024. So again, we treated in May when the numbers started to be getting above 10 mites per 24 hours, which dropped our mite counts. And then for the most part, most of them stayed low, below that 5 mark. And then we had a couple that were high that ended up having to be treated with ApiGuard to bring them back down to where they needed to be. And all of the hives in 2024 were, they overwintered and survived. Again, the highest number we had was 35 per day in 2024. Let's jump over to 2025. So again, March, April, May. Again, May we're getting in a little bit above the 10 mark, but I did not treat. You can see them exponentially just growing and growing. And then this is when we did oxalic acid, and it started decreasing. So in 2024, let's go back to this. In August, when we did oxalic acid vaporization, we used 3 grams for 2 deep boxes, which is about 1.5 grams per box. And on some of these, it had little effect. It wasn't as effective as we thought it would be. But in 2025, this year, it had a pretty good effect. But we did use 6 grams total, which is 3 grams per brood box, to get those down. And it was effective on most of them except for this one hive where it continued to increase and had to be treated. And this chart ends in September. I do want to point out too that so May is really where we need to be our first treatment point to get us through potentially September and October to treat them again. And then we'll do them again in December just to knock out the mites. So I think treating 3 times a year is probably going to be 2 times, and then 1 cleanup is probably where we need to be until we can get the bees bred to where they can help take care of the mites themselves. This small hive beetle drop, just to point out, in 2024 our peak was in July, but this year in 2025 our peak was clearly in June, and the numbers start dropping off. Our numbers typically drop off in September, and they're not too bad after that. This is well over 100, and this one's well over 350. Again, if you look at some of these numbers, 2024 on the mites, our highest was 35, and 2025 it was over 250. So these numbers are much higher because we didn't do any cleanup in the spring. We were trying to hope to see if the bees could make it, but they kept ramping up. It was just an experiment. So And that's where we are this time of year.